Hello and welcome to the Upward John Show, where we simplify faith and finance. Let's talk about debt. I feel such a pressing need to address this issue. In the western part of the world where I live in, I'm conscious that not everyone watching this video lives in the western part of the world. Credit is easily available. You can't imagine how shocked I was when I found out that you can buy takeaway now and pay later. You can pay in 3 installments. Wow. Whilst the credit is easily available, we need to safeguard ourselves because debt isn't always a bad thing. And I'll explain what I mean a bit further along in this video. But we need to ensure that we do not get ourselves in a situation where debt starts to suffocate us and take over our lives. I know of people, who've actually taken out a loan and they lost their life's work because they couldn't afford to keep up with the repayment. And when you find out how much they actually borrowed, it's nowhere near as much as the asset that they own. It's such a shame, we need to learn from those lessons and make sure that we do better. Now, how do I deal with debt? Number 1, get in the habit of spending only what you have. Spend what you have. Spend cash. By cash, I mean what you have available on your current account. Number 2, live within your means. I always banter with my sister about how expensive food is these days. We've had to make some lifestyle changes. We've had to substitute name brands for supermarket brands in some cases, which you find out sometimes about 40% cheaper, because I can't afford to just keep spending the way I did maybe a couple of years ago because things have changed and food is a lot more expensive these days. So it's just an example, but whatever it is, please learn to live within your means. It helps you avoid debt. Number 3, only borrow what you can afford to repay. Now, in the western part of the world again, most of us get a mortgage when we need to buy our properties. And because if we had to wait till when we had all that money, we'll probably end up waiting forever. So we take a mortgage, right? But actually, something interesting. So taking a loan, a mortgage is a debt. So loan isn't always a bad thing. That's what I'm trying to say. You find though, when you're sat in front of your broker or when whoever the underwriter that's going to approve your mortgage, what they want to see is whether or not you can afford to repay back this debt. So you go through an affordability test. So please, it's I think the same principle should be applied to things like credit cards, car finances, or any other loans. Please only borrow what you know you can afford to pay back. Number 4, try as much as possible to avoid making payments for everyday living expenses with debt. Now, let me just clarify what I mean. I know there are those people who tend to pay for everything on their credit cards and they repay it back immediately. No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, you've probably spent all your money and you realize, oh my God, I need to eat. So I need to buy food or I need to pay my bills. And you use your credit card and things like that. And hoping in anticipation that, I'll repay it out of next month's check. Actually, it's a good sign that you're probably living above your means. So personally, I don't encourage using a credit card or using loan to make payments for everyday living expenses. It's a sign that there's something wrong with how you spend your money versus your income. Please try and avoid it as much as possible. Number 5, set reasonable limits on your credit cards. I remember a few years ago, I think it was about 4 years ago, I looked at one of my credit cards and I realized I had a limit of 5,500 on it. And I asked myself, what am I going to do with a credit card limit of 5,500? I'll probably get myself in a lot of trouble. So I went online and I reduced my limit back down to 1,500. Because for me, as a spender especially, your credit card should only be for absolute emergencies only. So please set reasonable limits on your credit card because the more you use your credit card, the more the banks reward you and they keep increasing your limits. So please be careful. And remember, it is not your money. It is a loan. It is debt and it's got to be repaid back. So one of the safeguards I would encourage is setting a reasonable limit on your credit card. Number 6. Like I said, debt isn't always a bad thing. For example, if I take out a loan, say for example, I've been living in my house for the last 10 years and I looked around and I thought, actually, my kitchen could do with an upgrade. And I find out it's going to cost me about 15,000 pounds, whatever it costs to do a kitchen these days. And I think to myself, actually, I don't have that money in the bank and I can't afford it. I can go to the bank and take out a loan. I mean, a loan within reason, and use it to do up my kitchen, because what that does is it actually improves the value of my home. So, using a loan to improve the value of certain assets or acquire certain assets isn't a bad thing. Actually, most times, if used properly, is a good thing. Now, let me clarify what I mean by certain assets. I would only by certain assets, I mean land and property. I wouldn't use a loan to buy things like shares or to buy cryptos or anything like that. Shares are a really good investment. As for crypto, I really don't know, but I would not recommend you ever use debt to purchase or to fund those. And when you're having to borrow this kind of money, please only borrow within your means. Only borrow what you know you can realistically afford to pay back. Now, the next point I want to make is on the advantages and the perks of spending on a credit card, the air miles and the cashback and all these perks that you get. If you are a spender, please stay far away from these perks, because it's not worth you getting yourself in a lot of trouble. I know some people do this whole approach of, I spend everything I need to spend on my credit card and I pay back at the end of the month. Good for you if you're on top of your finances. Some people are able to make money or, get great value from doing this. But if like most people are, if you don't have your finances completely under control, there is the tendency for you to overspend when you take this approach. So I would encourage you, it's not worth, it's not worth the air miles, it's not worth the cash back when you spend on these credit cards. So as much as possible, please stay away from it. And the seventh point I want to make is repay your loans. Make it your priority to pay back your debt. Whatever it is you owe, please pay it back. Don't just do minimum payments on your credit card, because it would sometimes feel like an impossible journey to repay. You'd find, even if you have a credit card of, say, and you spent only 500 on it, and you were doing the bare minimum payment, which will probably be, I don't even know, maybe £5 or £10 or whatever, or even £15, it will take forever to fully repay back that money. So please do not only do minimum payment on your debt, do more than that, please. One key thing I've learned is the borrower is always at the mercy of the lender. So please remember that when you're borrowing, they get to set the interest rates, they get to set the terms of the loan, and you, the person borrowing, only have to accept it. So please remember that the borrower is always at the mercy of the lender. So please, as much as possible, avoid it if you can. If you find yourself in a situation where you have a lot of debt and it's spiraled out of control and you're struggling to repay it back, talk to someone about it. There are useful links below in the link below on this video where you can actually talk to someone free of charge and they can help you and guide you. Please keep spending responsibly. If you haven't subscribed to this YouTube channel, please subscribe so you're one of the first people to know when the next video drops.